So let's go ahead and take a look at the plans for this desk clock. This is actually one of the more attractive projects we're going to do, and partially because of the materials it's made of. So here we see the clock. It's kind of a modern sort of a look. I like that. Obviously we've got to have some sort of a clock mechanism. If we look here, we can see the inside of it's hollowed out, which is someplace for that clock mechanism to be. So it consists of only 3 pieces of wood, 3 body parts, 2 that are the same. They call them both body B and a body A, and a clock mechanism. So we're going to have to buy the clock mechanism. Now, one of the things we want to be careful about is getting the right clock mechanism. And it would seem like any of them would work, right? But this piece of wood is 3/4 of an inch thick. So we need a clock mechanism that'll work with a 3/4 inch thick piece of wood. Most of them won't. So when you're looking, look carefully. I found one on Amazon. It wasn't a problem, but there were an awful lot of them that were too short. Okay, so you got to make sure that the stem that comes out is thick and long enough to go through 3/4 of an inch of wood. Here's our dimensional drawing. It's really rather simple. We're 4x4. There's a hole in the middle, and they give us a diameter equals asterisk or star. And over here, this tells us that that's according to the clock mechanism. In other words, how big a hole does it need? Because different clocks will need different ones, okay? We see here that we've got 3/4 inch thick layers, which is normal 1x material, which gives us a total depth of 2 1/4. Here's that same dimension. And here we're seeing the part B, where it's got a cutout, and they're saying 7/8 of an inch all around, but they're also saying place the size according to the clock mechanism. So this is an expected size based on the clock mechanism fitting into a space that's 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. You may have to adjust that size to fit. And finally, we get here to our material list, and we see in the material list that our body is consisted of 3 pieces of 4x4, 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's saying hardwood recommended. So we're going to go with oak. Why? Because oak's easy for me to get. Then we need wood glue and stain, some varnish, and sandpaper. I've decided to go ahead and make this clock out of oak. It calls for hardwood in the plan, and oak is one of the easiest hardwoods for me to get my hands on, so why not make it out of oak? I like oak anyway. These squares that make up the clock are supposed to be 4 inches by 4 inches. So that means I can't use a 1x4, because a 1x4 is 3/4 of an inch by 3.5 inches. So I need to go to a 1x6, which gives me 5.5 inches of width. Now I need 3 pieces the same, and there's more than one way to go about cutting this. And I just want to show you this little drawing here. One way to do it is cut pieces that are 4 inches long and then cut that edge piece off. That gives me 3 pieces of leftover scrap that are 4 inches by 1 3/8. Well, not much chance I'm going to have to use that for much of anything. The other way I could do it is I cut off my piece at 12 inches long, or actually I would really have to cut it off to 12 1/4, because each of these soft kerfs are also going to be at 1/4 of an inch. In reality, instead of that, I'll probably cut it off at 12 and say 3/8, so I can cut this 4 inches, 4 inches, and 4 inches, okay? Yeah, it's a little more work, but it makes sure I don't end up with this last piece just a hair shy. That leaves me a piece of leftover that's 12 inches by 1 3/8. That's still not a very big piece, but I do a lot of things where I can use a 12-inch piece like that, whereas I don't do a whole lot. I can use that 4-inch piece. So laying out your project so that you can get the most out of the wood is always beneficial. Okay, so I've got my 3 blocks cut here, and I'm just going to mark these so I remember which one's which, and I'll be sanding this off later. But once I start cutting, I want to know what's what. So A is my face, okay? So B and C need to be cut so that I have room for my clock mechanism. Now, according to the drawing, we cut 7/8 of an inch in from each side, which works out great. And I've already checked. You notice my clock mechanism has rounded corners here. That's important, because if it was square cornered, I would probably have to square out the corners in my hole that I'm going to cut. But since it's not, I don't have to worry about that.